Danielle, I've done many interviews in my 5 years in media since I started this ridiculous career. One of the things that stands out to me, probably more than any others, is I was interviewing Abby Johnson, pro-life advocate once, and she told me that young women, when they want an abortion, they get a hold of her, they want an abortion, they oftentimes will give her reasons that are just selfish. I believe she told me, one, they wanted to keep their body. Two, they wanted to go get drunk on spring break. How many abortions in this country are actually done by a scared young woman who thinks it's a clump of cells? And how many are just done by a woman who wants a good body for spring break?
You know, the sad thing is most abortions really are about convenience, I think. And it's sad that this is a lie that's been sold to women, which really comes out of the 1960s. It comes out of the feminist movement, which basically teaches women that the sole person you should care about in your life is yourself, that you're number one. If you ever have a problem, basically look inside you, and that's the solution. And unfortunately, this leads to a culture of death, a culture where women complain and think, well, why am I single? Why have I not found the right guy? If you have found a guy, God help him, because you may put him through daily torture. And then, if you have a pregnancy, an unwanted pregnancy, then God help the child that then you're going to abort. And so sadly, we live in this culture, which has been this culture of death for the last 50 years since Roe v. Wade. But now that Roe has been overturned, I think we're going to see a return of a culture of life where that will no longer be the norm. And as you mentioned with rape and incest, that's really less than 0.1%. Incest is actually extremely uncommon. And so most of these abortions really are due to, unfortunately, those kind of convenient situations.
Shawn, how do you change someone's mind? What do you say to somebody, not to scream at them, but to change someone's mind who's maybe starting to get a little curious about this issue?
Ask them, what is an abortion? I think that is a forced question now, that abortion advocates can't rest under the comfort of Roe v. Wade. What is an abortion? What does it do? Who does it help? And I think when you break down what an abortion actually does, who it does it to, you can only come to the conclusion that an abortion is only successful if it kills a baby. It's the only surgery you're not supposed to survive. It goes completely against all healthcare and against all human nature. And I think that's a great dialogue starter. You mentioned the book, What to Say When, which we released 2 years ago. And we give you specific things, what to say and what not to say on the hardest topics surrounding this issue. This is not a complicated issue. We've tried to complicate it. But when you hear people like Jen Psaki saying it's a clump of cells, and then you hear the expert in all abortion, he did more abortions than any other doctor, Dr. Leroy Carhart, when he calls the baby a baby, which he did often in public interviews and both to the women, you realize that one side of this knows what an abortion is, the doctors who do them, and one side lives in a fantasy world and talks about lumps of coal.
Well, Danielle, what do you say? What's your go-to technique? Somebody, maybe they've been pro-abortion, they're starting to come around a little. What do you do?
I think you have to go straight to the truth of what it is, because the reality is every single woman knows, I think, who gets pregnant, even in the first trimester, that this is a baby. So oftentimes when we're outside of the reality of being with a person, we start going into, well, here are the scientific arguments, here are all these facts, which of course is important to know. But the reality of it is we all know what it means to be pregnant. And I think you have to talk about really just this havoc that's going to be wreaked on her life for the rest of her life, the guilt of that whole situation. I have a friend who was adopted, and she actually wrote a play about how much she loves her birth mom for choosing to give her life, because she could have aborted her and she didn't. So I think there are so many beautiful stories. There are other people who are mothers who choose to raise their child, and they have great stories as well. So I think it's really talking about the inspiration behind it. How can you inspire these women to grow up and learn how to take responsibility in a difficult situation, as opposed to really leaving them in a situation where they're desperate, maybe depressed because of this choice they made. And you mentioned spring break, the fun that they would have otherwise. It's really not fun when you have that kind of dark cloud surrounding it.
Available now, we have a special. It's on abortion. What a controversial issue. Should we leave it alone? Should we attack? Should we wade into it? Let's talk about it in this special that's available right now.